Hello and welcome to Pod Bible TV. I'm Stu Whiffen, and joining me today to kick things off in 2024 for Pod Bible Television, we are joined by our partner, the PodShop, and to tell us all about it, we have Spike joining us. Spike, tell me all about PodShop.
Hi, Stu. PodShop is a podcast production and marketing agency. We help businesses, influencers, anyone that's looking to release a podcast, essentially from any stage of their journey, really, whether it is they've just got a podcast and they want to start out, or if they are a bit more of an established kind of brand or show that wants to increase engagement or change the way they're doing things. So basically anything to do with podcasting, we do. To put it plain and simply, really.
I've seen on the website you do a sort of end-to-end launch sort of package. So talk us through like a potential podcast that maybe sort of either thinking of launching a podcast or somebody that's got a podcast and wants to kind of take it to a better level of production. So talk us through what that end-to-end package involves.
Yeah, for sure. So even if someone's looking to, either reposition or relaunch, the process is fairly similar. First thing we do, we will get onto a strategy meeting with, as many people in the team as possible, and essentially we just break down a few things before we move forward. And what we look at is, what is the overall goal for your podcast, and how we can look to achieve that. Is what you're doing or what you want to do in line with that goal? Because especially with video podcasts and video recordings, this stuff's not cheap. And we see people with, so many good ideas, and they want it to be, end to end, tons of video editing, loads of snippets. But if it's not targeting the right goal, then, it's kind of wasted. It gets diluted. So we start with that first. We get that goal. And then depending on what that goal is, will kind of shape the rest of the journey and how we move on from there.
And I guess there's sort of two ways to do this. I mean, you've obviously got the beautiful studio, so I guess people can come into the studio and use the facilities there. But what about those that maybe live in a little further afield? Is it something that you can also do remotely?
Yeah, 100%. So all of our strategy and the kind of launch services are remote. Obviously, we do have the studio, we do have the space to kind of do in-person recordings. We also offer a ton of remote recordings. We started doing it through COVID, and I mean, it's not as flash and as slick as it is nowadays. I was trying to work out a way that our clients could still record, not in a studio. I mean, it was so clunky. I was having to team viewer into people's devices, set up like GarageBand or Audacity on their laptops, record it to the device, and it was a nightmare. But it kind of worked, and from there we've moved on from that process, and we've got a very slick team behind doing the remote recordings. But our services are offered UK wide. We can either go and shoot on location in someone's office. That kind of works very well. We can shoot on location, anywhere really. It doesn't have to be an office, or we can look to record those remotely. The strategy stuff is always the first route before we do anything else, because from that, and depending on that goal, we can decide, okay, well, video is actually the way to go. I think we should go down that video, because sometimes it's not. Sometimes a full long form video isn't the right way to go for someone. So we like to do that part first and just make sure that everyone is pointing in that right direction.
And you've mentioned going on location to shoot, and by that I presume you mean video. So tell us a little bit, because I think what happened over lockdown was Zoom become such a big thing, and I think it made people realise that you could do so much more with podcasting and the video format. So tell us how important you've seen video become in the world of podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. So the journey and how important video has become has actually been a really interesting one, because I think, it's all been led by social media. People aren't hanging out on Apple Podcasts and maybe on Spotify, I suppose. People kind of scroll through there, but people don't hang out. They're not spending hours a day clicking through podcasts.
Sure.
They're on their social media platforms. Those platforms don't convert very well with still images and audio, not like they used to. The whole market has been moved by TikTok. Essentially, they've kind of led that market shift. But you've got Instagram Reels, you've got YouTube Shorts. All of these platforms are a short form video. So if you're looking to convert an audience or get new listeners, then you need to be targeting where people are hanging out, which is on these platforms. So that's kind of why it's really important to have the video snippets, and that's why it's important for converting listeners, even if it's just to the audio. You have to be including the short form video in your podcast strategy. Like I said, you don't have to do the long form, but you just have to. It's what converts better. It's what works well. So that's kind of what we say to anyone coming through that wants to have really good growth and really good engagement on their content.
And for instance, if you're a podcaster that's, I guess, my age and below, they're probably not that switched on to, I guess, TikTok. I guess we're still stuck in the dark ages of Facebook and Instagram, which are obviously both great tools for marketing your podcast for free. But with things like TikTok, if somebody comes that hasn't got a TikTok account or is looking to really grow their podcast, is that something that you can also advise on?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, each platform has certain benefits of the other. As an example, the demographic on each platform is slightly different. TikTok has matured. It's not the platform that used to just be kids dancing to a bit of music. That's sort of what it started as, and I know for a fact that even I was like, well, I'm not going to, this is not what I'm into. Sure. I don't really want to be watching that stuff. But it has matured nowadays, and the good thing about TikTok is that the potential for organic reach is crazy, because it's not as limited as other platforms, as Instagram, as an example, where it's very hard to get organic engagement. You have to try for a very long time. Meta will try and push you to spending money. Whereas you've got YouTube Shorts as an example, which I often say to people, kind of think of it as its own social media platform away from YouTube, just for a second. They've each got different demographics. For example, Instagram Reels is good for a slightly older generation, but it also covers all bases. Everyone's got Instagram. TikTok maybe a slightly younger demographic, but like I said, that's shifting. YouTube Shorts often has more, let's say, more mature pieces, stuff about the news, a lot about the current goings on in the world, that kind of thing. So what we do is we work out, again, it's the goal of that podcast, what your target audience and the target demographic are, and where you should be putting your time and focus. Because it's good to put them everywhere, but you can push more time and focus on a certain platform depending on the goal and the audience.
And moving away from maybe the more sort of independent podcaster, we've seen such huge growth in businesses using podcasts and video podcasts to not only talk to their staff, but to also use it for networking, to cast the net wider to extend the reach of what they do. I take it that's something that is a big part of what PodShop does in so far as sort of the more sort of corporate side of things as well.
Yeah, definitely. We have lots of different businesses that come to us to do a podcast for lots of different reasons, actually. Some use it as a form of lead gen, so they are attempting to gain new customers. Generally, we mostly B2B businesses we work with rather than B2C. But it could be to generate new leads. Sometimes it is literally just to open up a conversation with a potential lead, a potential customer. Maybe if the business has, a product that is of a higher value or a service that's a higher value, that in an industry that's quite competitive, it's more of a foot in the door. I know if I got an email from someone that said, "Oh, hi there, would you like to be on our podcast?" I don't know what I'd talk about apart from podcasts, I suppose, but if you do want to be on our podcast to talk about X, you're much more likely to reply and then start a relationship with that person than if someone just dropped into your inbox and said, hi there, I would like to sell you my services. So that's another way. And then also brand awareness. Brand awareness is a really big one as well, because of the fact you can create all of this content, all of these snippets to help grow a social media following and a brand as well. People are using those to, come across as, but to be an industry expert and a leader in that field. So what we've seen is actually a lot of businesses starting to do it, and starting to do it because their competitors are doing it in such a way. So they want to make sure that they're, keeping up with the times and keeping current.
I think whenever I've spoke to businesses about the benefits of having a podcast, I think one of the things that I always like to sort of stress is, if you was to sit in a meeting with someone for an hour, you'd probably tell each other about what you can bring to each other's business. But I think when you have that conversation and there's a microphone in front of you, I think that it's such a powerful thing insofar as people open up a little bit more. They see it as a platform to really sort of sell what they do. And I think at the end of that hour of recording a podcast with someone, the chances are they're going to open up on probably more of an emotional level as well. I think that at the end of that hour, you get so much more of a relationship and a connection with that person than you would in a traditional business meeting. Do you know what I mean there?
Oh, 100%, honestly. So, we've been on podcasts and been engineering podcasts where people have kind of taken it as like a bit of a therapy session. So they, you're right, they open up a little bit more, and what comes out of it is a lot more genuine than just a meeting. And I think people, when you put the effort into it as well, if you're having someone in and you've got these, got all the microphones set up, got all the cameras set up, it's like, it's clear that you've invited them there because you appreciate their experience and their knowledge in that field.
Yeah.
So they're a lot more likely to actually give you a better conversation and give you more information that they've built up over years and years and years, aside from just a fact-finding exercise or, jumping on a quick phone call to try and find something out. So yeah, for sure, you definitely get better content, and especially from the emotional point as well. I think especially people I know especially British people as an example, but we struggle talking sometimes. Can be quite closed off in a sense.
Yeah.
We're not the most forthcoming people in the world, but when you're in front of a microphone and when you start talking, I know me for sure, can't stop, and I'll just keep rolling, and especially if it's something that you're passionate about and that you enjoy, which again your audience will see as well. And that's another reason why actually choosing good guests for your podcast is so important, because the audience will engage as much as you do as a host as well, for sure.
Fantastic. So essentially what we've taken from this, if you're a business, or if you're an independent podcaster looking to set out on your journey within podcasting, or even if you're an established podcaster looking to really up things and maybe really integrate video into what you do, they need to come and talk to you at PodShop, right?
Absolutely, for sure. I think a lot of people, they think of a podcast as just a podcast. They think, oh, we've got this podcast, we're going to talk to a few people and it's going to get the message out there. And it is so much more than that. And I think I always stress this to people as well. And that's why we like to jump on the strategy sessions first. It is a lot of time and effort that has to go into the podcast. There's loads of podcasts out there. I don't think there's any more than there has been on a kind of year-on-year active amount, but it's just the barrier is so much higher nowadays. So it's really important that you are pointing in the right direction before you kind of set off and the goals are being hit. And from there, that's it. It's not just a podcast. It's like a multi-pronged marketing asset, let's say. I just thought of that on the spot. I'm pretty proud of that. Because you've got the main podcast itself, and then you've got all of the smaller assets that are created off the back of it. You've got all of the guest audiences, as an example, that are promoted as a byproduct of you releasing that podcast. You've got repeat content that you can do. So there's so many different ways, and I think that's what people forget, is that you just need to reuse that content and make sure you're using it as much as you can, rather than just a long form piece of audio.
Fantastic. If people want to reach out to you, where's the best place to get in touch?
Yeah, so if you head on to our website, www.podshoponline.co.uk, you can kind of take a look at all of our services. There is a calendar event on there. You can book in a 30-minute call that comes straight to me. We can have a chat via that way. Failing that, drop me an email on spike@podshoponline.co.uk or get us at any of our socials at podshoponline.
Fantastic. We'll ensure that the contact details are attached to this article within the bio on YouTube, as well as the show notes on the podcast. Spike, thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Stu. Been a pleasure.